It always takes a minute, but it'll give people time to get in and get sorted and relaxed for a few minutes, right? That's what we're here about, regulating our brains, right? So that we can have our most productive. Yeah. Hey, Nora, welcome. Happy Wednesday. Hi, Stuart. Good to see you.
All right.
Douglas. Yeah. Oh, Oregon. Wonderful. Okay.
Perfect. Well, it looks like we have quite a few people already. Thank you all so much for taking the time out of your Wednesday to talk about brain maps and what to do with them. My name is Marika. For those of you that don't know me, I'm part of the MindLift team. And today we are so excited to have Dr. Trish Leigh. If you don't know who Dr. Trish Leigh is, you must be living under a rock, but she's fantastic. She's been doing neurofeedback for a very long time. She's a cognitive neuroscientist. She's been teaching and coaching professionals for over 25 years. She has a plethora of knowledge, experience, and so we're super excited to have her today. Thank you, Dr. Leigh.
Hey, yeah, my pleasure. I'm very glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm just going to go through a quick kind of overview of like what MindLift is, what are the basic logistics, because I know that there's people on here who don't use MindLift. So on that note, before I get into that, as I mentioned, we're here with Dr. Leigh. She's also a certified brain and health and sex addiction recovery coach. As I mentioned, 25 years of experience. She's been doing neurofeedback a long time. She's used MindLift a long time. What's also great is she's used a lot of other systems as well, so she knows how to put everything together. So as I mentioned, she has a plethora of experience behind her. So we're excited today. Who are we? We are MindLift. We are basically a platform that enables you to do neurofeedback with your clients. You can do this with them face-to-face. You can do it with them remotely or a combination of both. We've been around officially in the market about 8 years. We were founded in 2014. We have well over 1 million, actually well over 1.2 million neurofeedback sessions completed. And really one of our missions is just making clinical grade neurofeedback easier for people to access. How does it work? The super basic logistics. Client wears the hardware. That is what is going to pick up their EEG. It's going to send that information to the software via the client's mobile device. So the client will always access MindLift from the MindLift mobile app. They can do it from a smartphone. They can do it from a tablet. We're compatible with both Apple and Android. And then anything that they do on the app is going to be uploaded real time to the MindLift clinical dashboard. Clinical dashboard is how clinicians manage and maintain MindLift. It's web-based. If you can get online, you can get onto your dashboard. The system, of course, is 100% HIPAA compliant. That is the super, super basic logistics. If you don't know what MindLift is, you want to find out more and book a clinical demo with me, we're going to put that link for you to do that. Excuse me, I have a frog in my throat. But that's the basic logistics. What we'll be talking about today is how MindLift works for you as a clinician. Is one of those things is you're going to do a baseline assessment. That baseline assessment includes doing a brain map. So what do you do with that information? You're going to couple that with what you're seeing clinically, of course, what the client's goals are, what they want to work on, and then, of course, all of the data. So I am not going to bore you with talking about this, but I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Leigh. And without further
hopefully I'm not going to bore you either.
Never, absolutely never.
I hope not, right? So, thank you for having me. I really do appreciate it. So I'd just like to share one or two more things before we dive into brain maps. Is that number one, I have always, for a very long time, been passionate about helping practitioners learn how to use neurofeedback to expand the reach of neurofeedback. It truly is one of the most amazing modalities. So, I'm here because I really want to help people learn how to use it well. To that end, I created a program called Neurofeedback Experts. So this isn't the first time I've been thinking about helping to teach practitioners. This is very important to me, that you begin to understand all the really awesome complexities, but also the simplicity at the same time. And I also realized on the slide about MindLift's inception that I'm a very early adopter, that I joined MindLift basically when it came on the market. I don't think I really realized that until now. But that's important to know because I have a brick and mortar practice with my husband, who he now runs it. It's called Leigh Brain and Spine, where we have used basically all the other technology that's out there. And I was looking for a very long time for something for a neurofeedback program that could be used at home or remotely. And I couldn't commit to anything because there was nothing that I deemed worthy of that until I came across MindLift. And in my time with MindLift since its inception, one thing I can say, and I'm not paid nor have I been asked to say this, is that the portal, the program is amazing, and the team is so responsive, and the updates continuing to make it better and better and better. There are very few companies you can say that about. So just to kind of frame where we're going is that I've used MindLift for a very long time, every single day, all day, every day. I use MindLift myself. I should have shown you my brain, but I don't know that I would want to show you the beginning of when I started using MindLift. But, I'm like the hair club for men. I'm a client also. So, it's important for people to know. So let us dive into the very basics of how to read a map. When you go into the MindLift portal, you will see the tab that says assessments. It has a lot of information in there. I am solely going to focus on the EEG aspect at very basic levels. So from a very basic level, when you see the EEG, and I'm going to show you examples in just a minute, there will be warm colors that show overactivation, and there are cool colors that show under activation. And I'm going to tell you a lot more about that. That is one fundamental concept that you need to understand. And if you're going to communicate the map findings to your client, I spend a decent amount of time making sure the client knows what I'm talking about, because if they don't know what that means, then they can't really understand what their map means for them. So that's what I'm going to show you primarily in different aspects as we go through. One thing I would like to encourage you to think about is to look at the patterns. I call them brain patterns. So we're not looking at the pixelated aspects of the map. We're looking for focal patterns. We're looking for global patterns. We're looking for regional patterns, all which can become important for your client. And then if you are practicing in any other clinical domain, this one's obvious, but I also just wanted to reiterate it, that we are looking at the story of a person's life, not only through their clinical information, but their map. The maps are they are my second favorite thing in the whole world. The maps are so cool. You can tell the story of a person's history, how their brain is performing in the present, and the symptoms that they are struggling with in the present, whether it be lack of focus, whether it be sleep issues, likely stress and anxiety is in there also. I focus primarily on screen addictions, from explicit matter all the way down to gaming to just being on your phone all the time. There's a pattern for screen brain that I'll share with you. But, you want to think about the client's map in the context of their history and their life. That is what we're talking about here. Now, hopefully you're wondering what my favorite thing is. My favorite thing is the progress visualization graphs over time, which I also will share with you today. Okay, so if we can move to the next slide. I'm just going to have the slides larger here for myself. So this is the summary of the brain map that you will see in the top section of the EEG section on the assessment tab in the MindLift portal. When we're looking at dysregulation in the brain, we're looking at basically changes in baseline arousal, and it exists on a continuum. So the easiest way to think about it is that I already talked about overactivation and underactivation. We want to see a fully green brain map. And I will tell you, I call it a unicorn, because there are brain maps that are pretty green, but I've never seen a fully green brain map. I wish I had a fully green brain map. Most of us are a little stressed and a little tired. I do have an example of one that's pretty close that I'm going to show you. But, just recognizing that a perfectly regulated, balanced brain, that would be very difficult for most people to achieve. But we can get them pretty close. When we see red on the map, that means there's too much of a brainwave or a brain speed. I'm going to share them with you. We're going to dive into them in just a second. When we see blue, there's too little of a brainwave or a brain speed. That's why when we see red, it's overactivation. It's hyper arousal, too much of that speed. Then when we see blue, it's too low. So on this graph, you can see at the bottom is what I call the rainbow scale when I'm communicating it to clients. It is Z-scores. It's the bell curve. It's normal distribution. It's a statistical measure, but we don't need to go into all of that. What we do want to go into is that essentially that rainbow scale is showing clients the levels of dysregulation any area of their brain is showing. So 0 levels away from optimal, which is green, 0 levels away from optimal is optimal. That's why a green brain map is the optimal brain map. Then we see yellow, orange, and red. That's 1, 2, 3 levels of dysregulation in the too high direction, overactivation of that brainwave. Then when we see light to dark blue in the opposite direction, that's where we see the underactivation or too little use of the brainwave. And we're going to go through it in just a second. But I frame this for clients, and this is essential that you understand this part, because if you don't understand this part, it's difficult to move on to the next. I think of it like building blocks. We have to have some foundational blocks set, then the rest of it just snaps into place. And I just would encourage you, if you have any questions about any of this, you can put it into the chat, because we're going to have a Q&A that we will go through once I get done going through the slides. And I'm happy to dive deep or to go wide on anything. I just want to stay focused on the forest for the trees. Then we can dig into the trees. Okay, so on the summary, you'll see theta, alpha, beta, and high beta. The next slide I'm going to show you, and the next slides, we're going to dive into all of the brain waves. So here you can see that what we're going to do today is talk about anxiety, ADHD, depression. I'll give you a peek at screen brain. The first brain map that we're going to talk about is anxiety. I mean, honestly, it's the most prevalent map that we will see, because without, waxing poetic, we know that it is a stressful existence most of us have kind of put ourselves in. And, I fall into that category, which is why I use MindLift. I don't feel stressed because my brain is regulated, but, I have 5 children. I run multiple businesses. It's a busy life, but the way I call it now, and honestly, it feels this way to me, it's a full life, because I can engage with it with my regulated brain. When my brain, this is the part I didn't want you to see at the beginning of my progress visualization graph. Back in the day, my brain was running so much faster than it is now. I actually spoke twice as fast as I do now. One of my college professors, I don't know, he thought he was kindly mocking me, but for my rate of speech is even slower, because my demeanor's slower. My thought processes are slower, but sharper. Slower in a good way. So what we're looking at here is down the right-hand side is the full brain map. You can see we have 2 columns, eyes open and eyes closed. Without going too deep into that, but just giving you a one-off answer about it, the eyes open map is an indicator of how the brain is performing in more of an active state. The eyes closed map shows us how the brain is performing in more of a resting state. And there are known scientific differences between the states, one of which I'm going to show you once we get down to screen brain. But that's why we're looking at these 2 columns, eyes open and eyes closed. The rows are the brain, I call them brain speeds, brain waves, but it's easier to think about them as brain speeds, I think. Brain waves, brain speeds from extra slow speed at the top, which is called delta, all the way down to extra fast speed at the bottom, which is called high beta. And we'll quickly go through each of them, and I'll just give you just a kind of global descriptor of each of them just to frame it, and then we'll land on high beta, which is the speed of anxiety. First, we have delta. It's 1 to 3 hertz. It's the slowest that your brain could perform. It is stay asleep mode. We really only want it activated during the sleep cycle. It's 1 to 3 hertz. And if you think about this logically, if a person was dead, their brain would be going 0 hertz, no electrical energy. 1 to 3 is very slow. So that is the extra slow speed of stay asleep. The next speed is called theta. Theta is still a slow speed, but it's a little bit faster. It's 4 to 7 hertz. 4 to 7 hertz is fall asleep mode. Theta is implicated or associated with ADD and ADHD and ability to focus. Delta, like I already said, it's involved in sleep, but it can also be involved in cognitive impairment, energy levels, those types of things. Then we have a row that combines them into slow waves. So I think of them as slowing in the brain or kind of like braking in the brain. You only want the brakes on when it's time to fall asleep and stay asleep. Then we move to alpha. Alpha are the medium speeds. They come in 2 bandwidths. Low alpha, 8 to 9 hertz. When it's green, it's the speed of calm. Then high alpha is 11 to 12 hertz. When it's green, it's the speed of calm focus. Medium speeds, they're more of neutral in the brain. At the end of the day, you want to be able to sit on the couch and go into couch mode and relax. This is also where a lot of integration will happen. It's important to have a healthy alpha rhythm in your brain, and we can talk more about that. Then we have a column that combines them, alpha 8 to 12 hertz. Lastly, we see the 3 fastest speeds in the brain, beta, low beta. When it's green, it's for focus. Beta, which is in the mid-range. When it's green, it's for concentration. High beta is the fastest speed that we're looking at on these maps. When it's green, it's for a healthy stress response, which leads us to anxiety. The signature brain pattern for anxiety is too much high beta. Here we see on this map, it's too much beta and high beta. And these are actual client maps, just so you know. So one thing I want to tell you, and we'll look at it in a minute, is that, you know, when I show you I've tried to find the most classic examples of anxiety, but it doesn't always look like perfectly blue in all the slower speeds and the medium speeds and perfectly red in the faster speeds. So I was trying to find more of a classic example. Here, you can see that this example, well, actually, maybe I'll frame it because you might not know. I do frame this for clients. I tell clients that the triangle that's facing the top of the screen is their nose. So this is a top-down view, allowing us to look at the brain from left ear to right ear. And where we see all the color is the frontal lobe. So, and again, building blocks, I try not to. Actually, a long time ago, I think before I started making sure people knew it was front, back, left, right, I got through a whole brain map interpretation for a client. I interpret this for clients because I think it's important that they know. But, you know, I got to the end of the meeting with the woman, and she's like, which one is front? And I'm like, oh no, I've been talking to you for like 30 minutes and you have no clue what we're looking at. So I am pretty clear about building these building blocks. What we're looking at here is the frontal lobe and frontal lobe dysregulation. That's where I see it basically all the time. You can see anxiety in different areas of the brain, but our frontal lobes are running hot because that's where executive function exists, socialization, impulse control, judgment, working memory, focus, attention, planning, organization, expressive language is close by. When we move a little bit further back from ear to ear, that's the sensory motor cortex. So those are really busy areas. Over the ears is the temporal lobes. They're strong emotional regulation areas. So I mostly see anxiety in the frontal lobe. It is going to look like red in these faster speeds, beta, and especially high beta. It will lead to symptoms of rumination, vigilance or hypervigilance. Vigilance is kind of like on red alert. Hypervigilance is always on red alert. This is fight or flight. this is sympathetic dominance, if you know any of those types of terms. It's a brain that's running hot. And I think of it like, a fire in the brain, because it looks red in these fast speeds. And if you've ever felt this, it'll make it so you can't sleep. You'll have, a brain that is, I call it problem seeking instead of problem solving, because it's running too fast to get to the solution. You'll also see there's low alpha. There's low delta and theta, which means there's sleep issues, and there's low alpha, meaning that it's difficult for that person to get into the calm and focused mode. Okay, so that's anxiety, and we can dive in deeper in a bit if you would like to, but let's move on to what anxiety training looks like and the protocol. So just to give you a one-liner about this is that I always recommend that you base the training on the brain map. That's what I do. The reason we have this technology is because it's come so far that we can use very targeted protocols for the very specific sites or regions or patterns that we see in a person's brain. Many of the other systems will, have it be symptom based, and we've come too far for that. We have too much data. So of course we are considering a person's symptoms. That goes back to the story of a person's life, the context. But when we identify that there's anxiety in the frontal lobe, then that's where we target it. Then we want to decrease all that high beta, 22 to 30 hertz. If beta was involved, like we saw with that client, you can also put a beta inhibit on. But basically, we want to train down the magnitude or the activation of these very fast speeds for the client. It creates neurological regulation for that person, which allows them then to self-regulate better. It is the missing piece for people who can't decrease their stress by themselves. But then, of course, it's important to help a person figure out what their stressors are and get a handle on them. So we also want to increase alpha, help that person get to that calm, focused rhythm. On this graph, I have a lot of things going on this graph, but the main thing I want us to focus on is the red line. And you can see that the red line is high beta. It started for this client up at 2.35. Based on the research that I've done, based on the research I've done into the research that exists on the within normal bandwidths of where we want to see these brain waves, high beta should be between 0.5 and 0.6. That's where the healthy use of high beta for a healthy stress response, not a brain that's being dominated by stress. So that is my goal when I'm working with someone, trying to get their brain down to that range. But again, remember there's individual differences too. So this is, the within normal limits bandwidth. For this client, you can see it starts very high. So if we're shooting for 0.55, this is extremely high. We see all these big spikes at the beginning, very high spikes. This person had a lot of stress and anxiety. One beautiful thing you can see is that within a month, it comes down. 1 month. And I chose this client in particular. This is an older graph, but I chose it because this gentleman's wife made him work with me. So what he told me was, I'm not doing anything besides the sessions. And I said, that's perfect. Another thing that happened, and I now, have a nice relationship with this couple, and I have permission to share this story anonymously. He made me call him Mr. his last name. Jamie, my assistant, she calls me and she's like, Mr. Miller, it's not his name. Mr. Miller insists you call him Mr. Miller. She's all miffed. She's like, you shouldn't even meet with this guy. I'm like, I didn't even see the brain map yet. I'm like, that's the high beta talking. He wants to be called Mr. Miller. I don't mind that at all. I'm here to help people. So I get on the meeting. Hello, Mr. Miller, and then a month later, he comes on the meeting and he goes, I apologize for the way I acted last month. His brain was in a completely different mode by then. He said he apologized for the way that not only he acted to me during that meeting, but that was his operating mode before. He was blown away that he could act so differently. And then, of course, he asked me, do you have any coaching strategies? What else can I do? And he became a very good client. You will see, and this is going to be another through line of our discussion here today, that my program is usually, people are in my program 4, 5, 6 months. So, and a lot of people, they don't stay in neurofeedback forever. I wish they did. But my goal is to get them as regulated as possible in whatever amount of time we're working together. Longer the better, right? But I don't always get a person to an optimized brain. And when I was younger, that kind of like tripped me up. I'm like, if they're such high beta, how am I ever going to help this person? I now know, a lot of the shift happens in the first month. And even if I can get this a lot lower and stabilize it a lot lower, that person's quality of life is going to improve significantly. So you can see towards the end that this person's brain now is down in the 0.6 range. And there's many people that I help that we get down to the 0.5 range. There's still some spikes. He has some challenging life situations that weren't going away. Like some of us have. He had hopefully he's out, but he had a son in prison, major stressor for him. So like some of these spikes, he still has a stress response when things happen, but you can see he's so much more regulated. First of all, they're lower. Secondarily, they come right back down. That's what regulation is about. So basically, we want to shift high beta or beta down using an inhibit, and we want to increase that alpha range and low beta. If low beta is low, also that calm focus in the brain. And when we adjust those two, bringing the fast speeds down and the medium speeds up, a person's internal environment changes. Then their outward situation changes also. And again, we can dive more into it, but let's move on. Just making sure we hit what we need to. Let's go on to the ADHD brain.
Dr. Leigh?
Yeah.
I'm just going to interrupt really quick because
Sure.
I know that
go ahead.
this trend screen isn't as super easy to see on the webinar. So just so that everybody knows, if they've never looked at this, these are different sessions over time. So what she's saying is he started out way, way high back in 2023, and over time you can see it going lower. So I don't know if you can't see.
Let me describe it for a minute. Thank you. So where you can access this is that on the main screen in MindLift, you can generate a report. And without going into all the details, that's where I got these trend screens. Then when you add it to the report, it will say progress visualization. It's progress visualization over time. It is my favorite thing. It really is. I'm not even kidding. I spend all my time evaluating these, getting so excited about how I can help people using MindLift. So for that gentleman, the first session date was up at 2.35, which is 4 to 5 times higher than what it's supposed to be at. Then every single session it came down, even for a person who said, I'm not trying at all. Well, you don't have to try, just do the sessions. They're like workouts for your brain, right? If you go to the gym and you work out, even though you don't try too much, you are going to get more fit. Then we create the flywheel, which will, where people are stuck in a negative feedback loop. That's what it's called. That's what keeps this high beta high. When we start to do the sessions and we see the sessions over time, we're stopping that negative feedback loop and we're creating a positive feedback loop. It's the flywheel that gets them moving in the right direction. So we're looking at the sessions over time. So this is the across session graph. There are within session graphs also, and I do dive into them. But if you, in your portal, if you scroll over this graph in real time, it will give you the numbers of how a person, they performed or the numbers they achieved within the sessions also. So I only really do a within session deep dive if I see something worthy of it on this graph. And that's what's so exciting. So you really can see progress across and within to a certain extent on this graph. So thank you for.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, ADHD. The MindLift assessment has many markers for ADHD down in the brain bulbs, as I call them. We're going to focus on the EEG, but generally speaking, what we look at in the EEG will also translate into the theta to beta ratios down below. So you have a wealth of information in the EEG, but also down below. ADHD is basically a hypo-aroused brain. This is where, people usually get the red in high beta is too much, too fast. People sometimes confuse orange, red, yellow, and theta or delta as being too much slowness, because they think of just red being fast. So what I want to make sure you know, going back to the rainbow scale, is that when we see red, yellow, and orange in delta and theta, or the slow waves, we're actually looking at too much slowing. So it's kind of like high beta, and beta is acceleration or gassing in the brain. That's why I think of theta and delta as braking in the brain. It's too much braking. You don't want the brakes on during the day, during the active state. So I have the full map over to the right, but I've also then taken the clip of delta, theta, and the slow waves to show you what we're most concerned about. High levels of too much slowness. You will see here that we're looking at 1.5 to about 2.5. That shouldn't be underestimated. I do see a lot of maps with red, but when we're thinking about 1 to 2 levels, if you pull out your old statistics book, which you don't even have to anymore, you can just go online. If you go online and you look at the bell curve and you remind yourself, when we get out 2 standard deviations, it's pretty far away from optimal. So we don't want to underestimate yellow and orange and just think about, the dark red and the dark blue. So for a person who has this level of delta and theta, overactivity of it in their brain, that will make them feel, I'm guarding my language, but I'm just going to let it fly, and then we'll course correct if we need to. From what I have heard from many of the people and my experiences with people, they will feel sleepy if they are not doing something or thinking something, because basically it's the brain is kind of trying to shut down. This is what leads to hyperactivity. People move their body, that's hyperactivity, physical hyperactivity, or people will have worry or stress, and that's mental hyperactivity. And it's to stimulate this underactivated, or it's highly activated in the slow speeds. So basically we'll have hyperactive behaviors to offset or as a compensatory strategy for too much braking or too much slowing in the brain. On the full map that we're looking at, you can see delta and theta, orange and yellow. Then when we look down towards the alphas and the betas, they're all blue. Again, I was trying to find a more classic example of ADHD. Too much slowing, not enough of the faster speeds. That's what creates what's known as the theta to beta ratio. It's essentially the ratio of slow to fast. If the gap gets too big, focus is difficult, attention is difficult. When it is residing in the frontal lobe, the front left tends to be the biomarker for ADHD, because that's where working memory and attention lives. The skills and abilities are primarily controlled. Impulse control and judgment are on the right side. Socialization is up in the frontal lobe. So when a person has ADHD, we see too much theta, sometimes too much delta. One thing to remind you is that ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder. And actually, I take a little heat online for this. I produce a lot of content. I'm trying to help the world understand how their brains work and what they can do to make them work better. And I take some heat online talking about this ADHD mode and, how it can create these symptoms. So the idea is that, it's And then if we look at the progress visualization over time graph, which is the next graph on the next slide, we are looking at, let me just move mine down here. again, if this is small for you, I'll verbally describe it. And again, this isn't a perfect outcome at the end, and I'm going to tell you why. So one thing I wanted to show you in this graph, this is the same progress visualization over time. We are looking at sessions. So what I wanted to show you is that theta is very high. It's the turquoise line. It's dominating the brain pattern. These are session dates. You can see also the person has a lot of anxiety. Anxiety and ADHD are comorbid more often than not. So we do see them, and they have an inverse relationship. So we can see there's a lot of anxiety. One thing I wanted to call your attention to is the noise bars. So you can see at the bottom, there's a lot of noise in the signal, the pink bars at the bottom. The easiest way I think about the noise bars is that when a person's brain is really struggling to regulate and to perform, there's more noise in the signal. It's kind of like friction or heat coming off of the reading because their brain is trying so hard. We will generally see the noise bars go down, down, down over time. And you can see that on this graph also. You can see that this theta has decreased over time, coming down again towards the regulated pattern at the end of this graph. You also see that then the stress and anxiety is the next thing to work on. I have the high beta inhibit on this protocol also. So sometimes when one brainwave comes down, another one will either go up or it won't come down. And then I'll change the protocols. You'll see in these trend screens that I am changing the protocol. So the way that you can see that is there will be the yellow color line is here at the beginning, and then it's not here. When we see dots on the trend screen, if you've noticed the dots, that's because I have different protocols for the left and the right hemisphere, which we're going to talk about in the next slide. And going back to, customizing the protocols and choosing the sites that need the most regulation. And there's different ways you can choose it. What to work on first. And I'm happy to talk about that if you'd like to. But the idea is that, we want to give the person the biggest bang for their buck, or in my world, I want to just get the brain moving as fast as I can. Because once a person starts to feel better, then, then they will have the outcomes that they're looking for. So this is how we can gauge ADHD protocol selection. We want to inhibit 4 to 7 hertz theta, drive it down, help that person's brain make less of it. Going back to the neurodevelopmental aspect of ADHD, that means that a person's brain never developed to reduce the amount of theta that they are producing. And there's a variety of reasons, but we can help them do that. So if a person has organic ADHD, we absolutely can help them. And there's a lot of research that shows that neurofeedback is very powerful for that. This is the way we do it. We drive it down through the inhibit while we're also enhancing those speeds in the middle. Generally, it's going to be either alpha, faster alpha, SMR, or low beta, bringing up that power and that calm focus in the brain. And our goal is to help improve sustained attention and usually all of those executive function skills like planning and organization.
Can I ask a question about this protocol? Yeah. Is this something that you would have the client do in the morning?
I recommend that clients try the training at different times of day and different days of the week. It's very individualized depending upon, I want a client's brain as calm and focused as possible, as close to the regulated state. Like if I had to do a training in the morning, which I don't ever, my brain wakes up and it's like, let's go. And then I ease into it. I have a very beautiful routine to keep her in check, but she wants to produce and do work. So I take breaks in the afternoon and I get beautiful sessions, much better than in the morning. A person with too much theta actually would be likely, hypothesis, be producing more theta in the morning because based on circadian rhythms, when the person wakes up, their brain's shifting out of delta, out of theta, moving towards alpha. If they're using too much theta, they might be stuck in too much theta. So the benefit of a morning session would be it could shift it down, and then the kiddo could go to school with greater focus. That's a benefit, but the starting point might be higher. That's why I have people train at different times so I can evaluate that. And I still have them train at different times once I know which times are the most successful in producing the most regulation versus the times where we're offsetting more dysregulation. But that is how we also encourage carryover.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, it's so
Next
fun.
slide.
That's why, like, this is the differential diagnosis part of this. When I was younger, I wanted to either be a lawyer or a doctor. Like, that was my goal. And it's because I love the differential diagnosis piece, you know, like finding the pieces of the puzzle. Like, if you like that as a clinician, once you learn how to interpret this, there's so many things you can do for your client, first of all, but it is so much fun. It is so much fun too. You'll never not have fun at work again, is the reality, if you like this stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to depression. Okay, so we've talked about, let's just recap for a second. Anxiety, too much high beta, lots of fast and extra fast speed. ADHD, that's a slow brain, too much slowing, lots of delta and theta. Now, depression is a brain that's using too much of that medium speed. So again, using the car analogy, medium speeds are neutral, right? So alpha is like coast mode. So you want to be able to get into coast mode based on circadian rhythms. You don't want to be stuck in coast mode, because if you are stuck in neutral, your get up and go got up and went, right? We don't want that for people. At the same time, when we're looking at this pattern that's associated with depression, we're talking about mood disorders, mood challenges, mood volatility. You know, depression, I think of depression in two different ways, and the brain maps can be different. One's kind of like a general malaise, you know, like it's difficult to get up in the morning, lack of motivation, stuck in neutral. But then there's the piece that it has all of the mood piece, feeling really down, up and down, back and forth, mood volatility. So most of that all comes from alpha in the middle being used too much and being used asymmetrically, being used too much on the left generally. But if we see this asymmetry, left or right, if there's more on the right, many times that can lead to more anxiety. The biomarker for depression is left frontal excessive alpha. So that's why I showed this to you. But again, just another gentle reminder, it doesn't always pop off the page as just an isolated focal area in left frontal. That's why we do want to look at a person's intake and talk to them about their symptoms. When a person tells me that they are depressed or they're diagnosed with depression, I have them describe it to me. What is that? Tell me how that plays out for you, so I can ascertain if it is more of general malaise or if it includes, and to what level, the mood aspect. So here you can see on the full brain map, there's also too much delta. So too much delta is going to contribute to more slowing. That person might be tired, lack of energy. But we do see in low alpha, high alpha, in the combined alpha group, we see that there's too much alpha in the left frontal. You will also note on the full brain map, which will be a nice segue to the next thing I'm going to show you, is that one of the primary markers that we look at between eyes open and eyes closed is alpha response. How much does alpha go up from the active state to the resting, from eyes open to eyes closed? You can see here in high alpha, it jumps up. It goes from red in the left frontal to red everywhere. So that means when the brain shifts into more of a neutral state from active to resting, it's really sliding into a resting state. So this might disrupt mood. This might disrupt a person's ability to get out of bed and feel well. Unfortunately, I have had toxic mold poisoning. Not only have I, I've been working with MindLift and using neurofeedback. I had toxic mold poisoning for honestly too long, almost a decade. It was devastating to my physical nature, but my brain held steady, which was amazing. I didn't know I was being poisoned by the air because it's invisible. I never had any of the mental health or the cognitive issues. I didn't even know until I had a lot of skin issues. Like, that's the testament to, you can regulate your brain through some of the worst of, what you might, face. But what I wanted to tell you, one symptom I did have is that it became much, much, much more difficult to get out of bed and to get going. I had brain fog in the morning. It would take me like an hour or two. And, I told you, general me gets up and I'm pretty ready to go. That has to do kind of with that alpha response and too much delta. So, this can play out as a disruption in circadian rhythms for people too. So if we look
Can I ask
at
you
the
a question?
yeah.
And granted, it's your own personal brain, so don't
Yeah,
feel like you have to.
No,
answer it. Did you?
I'm an open book.
Yeah. When with the toxic mold, did it show up on your brain maps or in your training trend screens?
It did not show up in my trend screens. But like I told you, I'm always a little tired and a little focused, I guess, because I'm never really stressed, but I'm definitely like, I have a little bit more fast alpha and low beta than the average person, I think, or at least I'm a thinker. Let's just put it that way. So it didn't show up in my trend screens. My high beta was always low. One thing that could be at issue is that, I only have my training set to see certain brainwaves. So I wasn't tracking the other ones because they weren't of concern to me until I was onto something. But in my brain map, I saw excessive alpha and excessive alpha response. I map myself usually around once a year.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, I'm not mapping myself constantly. I do map myself consistently, but on the next map, I'm like, oh. Then what I've done is I looked at all the maps in retrospect. You know what they say about hindsight, right? I wish foresight was 2020 or present sight was 2020. Unfortunately, it's hindsight that's 2020. I look back and I could see it developing in my maps.
Wow. Thanks.
Yeah. And I tell clients too, like, when I'm talking to clients, I hypothesize, because I say this brain map is a snapshot of your brain, but it is your baseline. So like, if I took 5 of them right now, they're all going to be the same. But if I did have a brain map once a year for the last 20 years, I could see how these patterns developed. Yeah, really wild. And then I changed my protocol, and I also had more delta too, with that not. And I never trained delta before because my delta was always regulated. Yeah. So yeah, it was pretty wild from a personal standpoint. And then when I found out that I had, mycotoxin poisoning, I tripled down on using MindLift because I would use it, generally I use it once or twice a week, just keeping everything going. But then I doubled down to daily sessions again till I was regulated.
Wow.
Yeah,
awesome.
It's an amazing tool. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So yeah. And I think I get these experiences to have empathy for clients because now I work with a lot of clients with complex chronic issues. Because I did have a lot of autonomic nervous system dysfunction, like in hindsight, I didn't realize. I had no stress response. That was pretty wild. But I didn't have excessive high beta. My daughter and I almost got into a car accident, and I averted it with cat-like reflexes. But then she burst into tears, and I'm like, nothing. That was the wake-up call. I'm like, this can't be good. You know what I mean? And then these things come on for a lot of the things that people deal with. It's not a switch that's been flipped. It's a development of dysregulation in the brain over time. And that's why a person can't like put their thumb on it until they're at a critical mass, Mm-hmm. So, but we can see it back out. And that's the exciting part. Okay. So when we're looking at the trend screens over time, what we're looking at is it's either going to be low alpha or high alpha or the combined group of alphas. I do parse it out, but as a beginning clinician, unless you get really good at parsing out low and fast alpha, you may want to stick with the 8 to 12 hertz whole alpha group. Alpha, and I'll talk about in a second, I've come to really nuance the alphas in my work, and I'll tell you about it in a second. But what we want to do is drive that alpha speed down and increase usually either low beta or beta. Beta tends to be the advised protocol, but I watch that because I don't want to speed. When you enhance beta 15 to 18, you're speeding a person's system up. So you want to make sure you're not speeding it up too much, but it can really help. But then many times I'll go to low beta also. Again, watching this progress visualization over time, seeing it trend down and change the protocols if you need to. So here you can see that alpha started high, up by 2.69 and trended down. We want it in the 1 region, trended down beautifully over time. And again, it's not a lifetime, it's a few months. And that's what people can expect. So you want to inhibit 8 to 12 or within that alpha range. If you see that focal area in the left frontal for this alpha asymmetry, then you want to drive it down on the left. You do want to isolate that focal area. Again, going back to doing what your brain map shows you. And even when I have a hunch, I will tell you, like, because sometimes I struggle with what protocol should I set, because there's a couple different things I think I should start with. I start with what the brain map tells me, and then I course correct if it doesn't need that much training. I do start with the data every time. Okay, let's go to the next brain map. Just to reiterate the point that I've been trying to make is that a lot of times we don't have just boom, the pattern pops right off the page. ADHD, there it is screaming at you, or, you know, alpha asymmetry of depression screaming at you, or anxiety screaming at you. Many times there's different focal points in those different brain patterns, and there's a combination of them. And that's where, like, you know, that's when I'll really think, okay, where do I start first? So the example here we have too much delta, but it's yellow, moving to orangish. We have that posterior region that it has a lot of delta. And again, asking the person what they're struggling with. If it's fatigue, in the occipital lobes are dedicated for visual processing, but many times, like, it's not visual processing. So I don't get so concrete about the brain areas and linking them to symptoms. I look at the symptoms and then look for the brain areas that are implicated. But in the back of the brain, that's also a hub that has long neural connections up to the frontal lobe. So this could definitely be at play with cognitive impairment or decline, with energy levels, with chronic fatigue, those types of things. You'll also see then when we go down to the alphas, there is high alpha on the left. So we have too much delta. We have too much high alpha on the left. We have low beta and beta. Those fast speeds are low, like we saw in that ADHD pattern. Not enough use of those faster speeds for focus and concentration. Then we see that hotspot in the right frontal of high beta, anxiety in the brain. So here we basically have like focal patterns, regional patterns, and more of a frontal lobe global pattern. So that's where it gets, you know, fun and exciting, but that's the differential diagnosis piece, is like, oh, okay, what do I do first here? I spend time with the clients, find out what their struggle is, find out what their priorities are. So if a person has debilitating fatigue and can't get out of bed, we definitely want to target that delta. We can target the different brain waves at the same time. We can set protocols for different sites and have it cycle through, alternating automatically, which I often do. So you can craft a program for a person based on everything in here, but you also could target if you wanted to. And then just one more thing I wanted to show you, which is my expertise these days, which fell into my lap on purpose, not on purpose. It fell right into my lap, is that I have written a book and it's published through HarperCollins. It's called Mind Over Explicit Matter, where I talk about QEEG brain mapping. I talk about using neurofeedback as the first line of defense for screen addictions, namely explicit matter, which is affecting the vast majority of males in particular, but the vast majority of adults, even just on social media. I have put in the book proposal for my second book, which is just on screen addictions. Everybody basically has, a dysregulator in their pocket. You all have dysregulators in your pocket. We sit in front of screens all day, every day. First time in history that, the average person could get too much dopamine and desensitize their brain. And it's happening to everybody. So it fell into my lap with the explicit matter, about a decade ago. And once you get to know me more, you will know when that happens, I cannot be stopped. I ended up pivoting the vast majority of my work into helping people with pornography addiction and screen addictions, gaming, kids who have tantrums because they can't go without their phone. As a mom of 5 children, I told you my children are mostly adults. My youngest is 15. My first 4 are it's birthday season. So they're 22, 21, 20, and 19. They're all a year apart. So I live this journey of regulating people and their phones and their computers too. But what I wanted to show you is that what I've seen is that high alpha that we see in that shift from eyes open to eyes closed, alpha response in some people is off the charts. The first time I saw it in my MindLift portal, I think I called Stuart and I'm like, please explain to me why this brain bulb is at 352%. It was literally off the charts. And he didn't totally know, and I didn't know, but now I know because I have seen it thousands of times that it's associated with dopamine desensitization in the brain. So this is something that I have developed protocols for. It's definitely next level stuff. You want to get a handle on the primary stuff. But if you see this excessive high alpha shift in alpha response, like for example, yesterday, somebody's was 186%. This is down in the brain bulbs in the EEG. You'll see it as red in high alpha in the eyes closed, but down in the brain bulbs, in the posterior, alpha is supposed to increase by 50% when a person closes their eyes. In the central region, it's supposed to increase by 30%. So when I say that the person's increased by 352%, that's a significant increase. And that has to do, screens are called supernormal stimuli, and explicit matter is at the highest end of it. So it's the first time in history that basically everybody's brain's at risk for this. And so I could speak about that for hours.
Should I feel good that mine's always not high enough?
Yes. Yeah, I know. Well, I know that's exactly it. That it's really interesting too, is that the average person, and what, America means by that is the average person is too stressed out. And so you have, you don't have enough, which means when it's time for you to go chill out, your brain doesn't naturally shift into chill out mode as well as it could. These people's brain maps, they shift into artificial neutral, on steroids, artificially from external regulation by using screens. They still have underlying stress activation. I work with a lot of high performers, CEOs, lawyers, doctors, neurosurgeons, and they'll be like, I'm a high performer. I'm like, yeah, because you're self-medicating with dopamine, all the stress. So I think we're better off being a little stressed out and dealing with it in a healthy way.
Yeah. Do you want me to go to the next slide?
Yeah, though I think we are, what do we have left? Yep. Because then I think we should be at Q&A time, because I'd love to answer people's questions, because I know that there's a lot of value in that. So I would really love to do that.
Okay, so luckily we have Stuart compiling them all on the back end. Thank you, Stu. Okay, from Brittany, would you agree that an imperfect brain map, if not negatively impacting functioning, could actually be gifts for the client? An example might be too much alpha actually contributing to enhanced creativity compared to the normal population.
Yeah. And so I don't really ever use, you've already heard me, I talk about an optimal. I mean, that might be a loaded language. I try to be really careful with my language, is that, I'm a big believer in neurodiversity, right? So our brains are all diverse. It's really about, that's why the context is important. If a person has, behavioral symptoms, or they feel their mind not working like they want to, and then you see these elevations, then you know what they're linked to. But I will tell you from working with high performers, I work with a lot of very high performers, that usually that dysregulation is not a sign of like extra optimization. It is a sign that they have moved away from their optimization. You know, too much alpha. If we see red alpha, that doesn't mean like lots and lots of awesome alpha use. It means too much alpha, taking them away from their creativity because their brain is actually slid into neutral too much. The closer to the green brain map, the more a person will report feeling optimized. But of course, it's individual, like I've already said.
Yeah, thank you. This is one thing that everybody continues to ask. So I just want to make sure, if you did not see the answer in the chat, yes, there is a recording and it will be emailed, I believe, by tomorrow. So yes, it is recorded. Let's see. Curious how neuroinflammation, silent inflammation, glial activation shows on a brain map. Is it high alpha? Thank you, Dr. Auer. Good to see you on here.
Yeah, it typically shows up as more delta. There are some practitioners that will actually classify delta as inflammation. I don't do that, just so you know. But people with, and again, unfortunately, I have had chronic inflammatory response syndrome. So as you know, that's why I already said to you, like when I checked my map and I had more delta, and then I added it to my training, I was blown away how much delta I had, but that was a product of all the inflammation in my system. So long story short, it usually shows up as delta.
Interesting. I have a question about that because I had a pretty bad TBI, which shows up as delta. But is there a way to differentiate? Like, I have no symptoms of the TBI, by the way. It happened when I was 12. So like over time, could it just be from that? Or do you think maybe it could be from something else adding to it?
Usually what I'll do is, you know, pick up those breadcrumbs on a person's intake. And then I will kind of calibrate for that when I'm looking at the brain map. Usually I look at the brain map first and then I'll pull up the intake and then I'll be like, oh, TBI when they were 12, that might account for some of the delta. And it goes back, the answer goes back to you're either in an upward spiral or a downward spiral. So I always say, and I know it's cheesy, that there is no such thing as a horizontal spiral because these are feedback loops. So if your brain is close to optimized, you're acting and feeling and you're using your mind in a way that creates and you feel well and you're able to sleep, you're getting the positive feedback loop. And then things will get better and better and better, flywheel. But, you know, if you have a TBI when you're young and then it doesn't regulate, it will become more dysregulated over time. It'll lead to sleep issues and then you're tired and your delta goes up. That's what these feedback loops are. Like one example, without going too deep into it, is that with chronic traumatic encephalitis in football players, I was really into head injuries for a while too. So I told you, I find out about it. I go down the rabbit hole of research. So looking at professional football players who all died of mysterious circumstances, they're in the Boston University Center for CTE. They've looked at their brains posthumously and, you know, seeing that they do have these problems with glial cells. They basically, long story short, they were in that negative feedback loop. They had multiple head injuries when they were playing, but their cognition was fine. Their mental health was fine. Then those things began to spiral because of the negative feedback loop. We have the opportunity to break that feedback loop, whether a person has the symptoms or not.
Yeah. Awesome. Let's see. Are you, excuse me, are you balancing neurotransmitters and autoimmune triggers along with the neurofeedback?
I personally don't, but because the way I am, I've convinced my husband to do that in the office because my practice is all remote and it's just a level of, you know, I only have so much of me. I produce a lot of content. I focus on screen addictions. But because of my own journey, my husband in our office, he has a lot of regenerative medicine technology that he uses. So I think it's a great idea if that's what you want to do. I personally don't do it. But what I can tell you also, because, you know, again, I've had all the tests and I've done all the things and I've taken, you should see my pantry. We had to move out of our home take our home down to the studs, buy a new home, live there with my 5 kids, and then we moved back into our home because my husband really wanted to. But we built a special pantry for supplements because that's how many of them that there were. But what I can tell you is when you regulate your brain with neurofeedback, neurotransmitter production and cascading improves significantly. So even if you don't want to go into using supplementation in that, you can focus on that using neurofeedback with MindLift.
Awesome. Oh, I like this one. How many brainwaves at a time should be worked on in a single session?
Should's kind of a loaded question. So I'll make some recommendations. But again, it's going to be kind of clinician's choice, and there are different philosophies. So there's some clinicians that love to do a full squash. You squash all brainwaves, and I'll do that like for a person if I really feel that's necessary. So first, I choose that question. I answer it on a client by client basis, but I do try to go for less is more. And I do try to, there's research studies that show like if you're training bandwidths that are a little further away from each other, it can be easier on the brain because you're not asking the brain to train, 8 to 10 down and 11 to 12 up, and they're right next to each other in the bandwidths. So if I'm able to, I'll try to go a bandwidth away. So bring high beta down instead of mid beta, bring low beta up and high beta down. Typically, I try to stick to 3 inhibits and an enhance is what that's the most I'll do generally, unless I really feel it's necessary. I would prefer to do 2 inhibits and an enhance if at all possible, just making it easier on the brain.
Yeah, I would say that's probably the most common that we see with our clinicians as well.
And if I can just give you, I think of any question you have, you can answer it with workouts. Because okay, if a person hasn't worked out and you see that their biceps are really weak and they tell you, I want stronger biceps, do you have them do burpees? No, because burpees are tough. You need to get stronger before you do a burpee. You have them do bicep curls, and you might have them do bicep curls and tricep dips. So you're getting the alternating muscles. That's how I think of it. Like you can really approach it kind of logically like that. Don't overwork the system and do what's going to give your client the largest return on investment quickly. And it's not about money. The return on investment is we want to get them moving so they're psyched to stay and continue. And that can show up in the first month.
Yeah, I love that. I put everything into workout metaphors as well.
Me too. You'd think, I know I've been too busy working. I have barely worked out, but you'd think I was working out like a champ. New Year's goals, I'm already working out.
Let's see. Do you have certain positive reinforcement percentages that you use from training? I think that's the thresholding. Do you have a certain threshold?
I follow what's in MindLift for the most part. Just so the recommended protocols that are already in there. If you're creating your own protocols, I will stick with that set of protocols that is in there. The thing that I try to stick with the most is, making sure we're in that range, not too high of feedback, not too low, usually in 40, 44% at the most. But this is the more important thing for me is that if I'm training the left and right hemispheres at the same time, I try to make sure the protocols have consistent thresholds because I don't want one side to be so easy on the brain. I mean, if I need to, I will, but also for the client experience, they'll be like, why am I cranking on the right and the left's more difficult? And that goes back to like how many inhibits you have. Also, I try to make it a balanced experience. But also recognizing that MindLift automatically thresholds. It takes a baseline every time. It's going to auto threshold. So that's where, maybe a different time we can dig into the within session graphs. You can see how many times within the session that the automatic threshold has either made it more difficult or more easy. You can look down in the training tab and look at the percentages of feedback for each of the sessions. You can go into the rounds. That information tells you like how you could adjust that for your client. And I will do it if it's necessary, but I try to stick consistent and balanced.
Cool. And for those of you that have never seen the MindLift dashboard, there are 7 preset training protocols. Those preset training protocols already have the threshold built in. They have the recommended electrode placement as well. The clinician can change that, but it does take a lot of the guesswork out at the beginning. You can also start from scratch and fully customize. So if you've never seen the dashboard, that's how there's 7 preset training protocols to choose from already. What about the clinical impact under stimulators like Ritalin or Adderall?
Okay, so if a person is on a medication, I tell them stay on the medication. Then I give them a disclaimer that I can't tell them what to do with their medications. All I can tell them is what I would do if I was them, right? Because I will tell them things about their medication. But they stay on their medication. It's really awesome if you've ever worked with a client, because they can stay on their medication, and there's studies that prove this. I used to, a long time ago, actually, I haven't thought about this in a while. There's studies that show groups of kids who were on stimulant medication did neurofeedback and had beautiful gains. What I try to do is recommend that as we get rolling with the sessions, that the person goes back to their prescribing doctor and weans off if that is their goal. Then a really cool thing happens is you'll see theta coming down, down, down. Then if they drop their prescription amount, you may or may not see theta jump up just a little. It won't jump back up to where it was at the beginning of training, but you'll see like that little increase, and then you keep training. So if a person's on medication, especially stimulants, it can be easier to close that gap and to wean them off without them like feeling like they need their medications. It works really powerfully that way.
Awesome. Let me see. Oh, I love this one. How would you respond to a client who has had a lot of progress in their brain maps, but may not feel that way? Like everything's balanced, but then they still have the symptoms.
That's a great question. And I do it all the time, very lovingly, but with strength of conviction. And that's why I think, us being here together really is important, because when I look in the data and if their brain has improved, I will share that with them in whatever data I need to. And I will look them right in the eyes and say, I can confidently tell you that this program is regulating your brain within and across sessions, and I will show them why. Then, well, let me back up for 1 second. And again, I'm guarding the language, but here it comes, is that many times clients neurofeedback will be the first thing they blame for a problem and the last thing they attribute to their success. So I'm aware of that. I've done this for a long time. So if a person has a problem, then I try to find out what is happening in their life. And if you ask a person, because I say I have high beta set to inhibit, it could never increase your high beta, never. So tell me, and then I can see on the progress visualization graph, I'll go, I see that you had a full point spike in high beta last Tuesday. Tell me what happened last Monday or last Tuesday. And then they'll go, my mother-in-law came into town. And I'm like, less time with your mother-in-law. But then I'll say, no, okay, we can't avoid our mothers-in-law, most of us. So if your mother-in-law is going to come into town, tell me what unfolded. And then I'll give them a strategy to bring that high beta down. I always bring it back to, I am confident this is helping you. And it's things in your life we need to work on. But now, alternatively, what if their data is getting worse, right? Because that can happen. It still goes back to their life, because if I've set the protocols correctly based on their brain map, then there would be improvements. If there's not improvements, they're swimming upstream against it. So like another example, if I'm decreasing delta, I have actually he's doing beautifully. He's done with the program now. A college student, delta was so high. And I'm like, tell me about your sleep. And he didn't change his sleep routine. I'm like, my man, you cannot go to bed at 2 a.m. and get up at 6 a.m. every day and help this delta come down. Help me help you. We need to change this sleep routine. And he did. And wow. He had roommates, and, and when you look at the data and you can bring it back to, what might be going on with the person. And then if they share it with you, it's really cool, but you also have all the answers. It doesn't mean the person's always going to join you in the solution, because, you know, I've had my fair share of that, but it does mean I'm completely confident in my ability to help people.
Awesome. We are officially 15 minutes over the webinar, like we discussed at the beginning, Dr. Leigh.
I said I've never gone under. I'm go over girl for sure.
Although there's one question that just came through the chat that I actually would love you to answer. When your clients are actually doing their neurofeedback training sessions, are you monitoring them via Zoom, or do you monitor them post?
Yeah, post. You know, you definitely can do that. That's not part of the way that I think about neurofeedback. Some people do. And I think that if that's something they enjoy, I monitor it post, and then I will give people suggestions later on based on the data. I really feel very confident that the system will do the work for a person, that you don't even have to do that unless you really want to, and unless you have strategies, like you're going to teach a person some breathing strategies in the middle of it. You can do it without it. I do not.
Awesome. I know we have a lot of questions that are unanswered. We are going to work to get those answered after the webinar. We have them all compiled. So we'll email you all that have not been answered. Dr. Leigh, this has been amazing. I hope we can actually do more of these, because it's so insightful, and I think that everybody has really enjoyed it. If you didn't hear, yes, this will be recorded. It will be sent to you. If you have follow-up questions, you can always send them to us. If you don't have access to our dashboard or app, you can just email support. I'll have to write that here, support@mindlift.com. And on that note, I'll let you all get on with your day. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Yeah.
You're welcome. You're welcome, everybody. I'm glad you're here.
Oh, hey, Doug. Good to see you. And good to see everybody, to be honest. I can't go through one by one, but seeing people pop up. So awesome. Well, thank you so much. And everybody have a good week and a good rest of your November. And we'll talk very soon.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining. See you soon. Okay.